I'm Dax, and at 42, I never expected that my son's high school graduation party would become the moment I learned how easily someone could turn our family's private celebration into public entertainment. 3 hours earlier, I'd been standing in our backyard watching Kai celebrate with his friends around the pool, his graduation cap still sitting on the patio table where he'd tossed it after the ceremony. The kid had earned this moment after 4 years of maintaining his grades while playing soccer and working weekends at the sporting goods store downtown. Everyone we cared about was there, about 30 people total, including extended family and a few close neighbors. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see how this situation unfolded and what I discovered about digital privacy that every parent needs to know. My ex-wife Serafina had shown up earlier that afternoon, which surprised me since our divorce 3 years ago had left things strained between us. She'd been unusually pleasant, moving through the crowd with her phone out, taking what I assumed were the typical party photos and videos that parents take at these events. I remember thinking it was nice that she was documenting Kai's day, even filming some of the conversations with my parents and my brother Zenith when they arrived with their gifts. She seemed more engaged than usual, positioning herself where she could capture different angles of the gathering, though at the time I interpreted this as maternal pride rather than anything concerning. The party had been winding down around 6 p.m. when Zenith approached me in the kitchen while most guests were still outside by the pool. He'd been quiet all afternoon, which wasn't typical for him since he usually became the center of attention at family gatherings. I'd noticed him checking his phone more frequently than normal and avoiding the casual conversations he typically enjoyed, but I attributed this to work stress or maybe relationship issues with his wife. When he asked to speak with me privately, his tone carried an urgency that made me set down the stack of paper plates I'd been collecting. "Dax, we have a problem," he said, glancing toward the sliding doors to ensure no one could overhear us. His voice was lower than usual, serious in a way that immediately caught my attention. "What now?" I replied, expecting to hear about some minor family drama or logistical issue with the party cleanup. Instead, he pulled out his phone and opened an application I didn't immediately recognize. The interface looked different from the social media platforms I was familiar with, and there was something about the way he held the screen that suggested whatever he was about to show me was significant. "Your ex-wife is live streaming this party," he said quietly, turning the phone toward me. On the screen was our backyard, our pool, our family and friends, broadcasting in real time to what appeared to be an active audience. The camera perspective was clearly from someone moving through the crowd, capturing conversations and faces that I recognized from our gathering. In the corner of the feed, I could see a number that showed 400 active viewers, people I didn't know watching our private family celebration as if it were scheduled entertainment. I stared at the screen for several seconds, trying to process what I was seeing. There was Serafina in the frame, holding her phone at the exact angle I'd been watching her use all afternoon. The realization that our family gathering was being broadcast to hundreds of strangers created a strange disconnection, as if I was watching someone else's life rather than my own. The chat section beside the video showed rapid-fire comments from usernames I didn't recognize, people discussing our family, our home, and our son's graduation party with the casual familiarity of regular viewers. "How did you find this?" I asked, still trying to understand the full scope of what was happening. Zenith explained that he'd been scrolling through various apps out of boredom when he'd stumbled across the live stream. As he showed me more details about the platform, I began to understand that this wasn't a typical social media broadcast. The interface, the viewer interaction features, and the nature of the comments suggested something more commercial, more exploitative than a simple family video share. The number 400 stayed in my mind as I watched strangers commenting on our most personal moments, treating our family's celebration as content designed for their consumption. The investigation that followed consumed the next 3 days of my life. I couldn't sleep that first night, staring at the ceiling while questions circled through my mind about how long this had been happening and what else Serafina might have broadcast without my knowledge. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Marcus, who specialized in family law and had handled our divorce proceedings. His initial reaction was disbelief, followed by immediate concern about the legal implications for Kai's privacy and our custody arrangement. Marcus suggested we needed to document everything before confronting Serafina directly. He connected me with a digital forensics specialist named Riley Voss, who worked with law firms on cases involving online exploitation and privacy violations. Riley's office was located in a nondescript building downtown, filled with multiple computer monitors and equipment I didn't recognize. When I explained the situation, her expression remained professional, though I caught a flicker of something that suggested she'd handled similar cases before. OnlyFans, she said after I described the platform interface Zenith had shown me. It's a subscription-based service where content creators charge viewers for access to their posts and live streams. The fact that she was broadcasting your family gathering suggests she's been monetizing your private moments. Riley began typing rapidly on her keyboard, navigating through various screens and databases. If we can establish a pattern of this behavior, it strengthens your legal position significantly. What Riley discovered over the next 48 hours was worse than I'd imagined. Serafina had been maintaining an active OnlyFans account for 8 months, since January of that year. Her subscriber count was 2,847 people, and her monthly earnings averaged between $12,000 and $15,000, with significant spikes during what Riley identified as family content days. The graduation party wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a systematic pattern of exploiting our family's private moments for financial gain. Riley showed me archived screenshots of previous streams that featured our family. There was Kai's birthday party in March, where she'd live-streamed from our backyard while he opened presents from his grandparents. A family barbecue in April, where my parents had visited for Easter. Their conversations about Kai's college plans broadcast to paying subscribers. Even casual moments when she'd picked Kai up from soccer practice, filming their conversations in the car and presenting our family dynamics as entertainment content for strangers who paid monthly fees to access her broadcasts. The financial records Riley obtained showed deposit patterns that corresponded with family events and holidays. Christmas had generated $3,200 in a single day when she'd streamed what I now realized was our gift exchange at my parents' house. Valentine's Day had brought in $1,850 when she'd filmed herself and Kai baking cookies together, presenting it as a single mom and son bonding narrative that her subscribers apparently found appealing. The Easter barbecue had earned $2,100, with viewer comments requesting more content featuring the family dynamic. Most disturbing were the promotional materials Riley found on Serafina's profile page. She'd been using photographs of Kai, carefully cropped to avoid showing his face directly, but clearly featuring him in family settings to advertise her authentic family content to potential subscribers. The descriptions promised real family moments and genuine conversations with her teenage son, marketing our most intimate family interactions as exclusive content worth paying to access. Riley also discovered that Serafina had been responding to subscriber requests for specific types of family content. Messages from paying viewers asking her to stream particular activities or conversations, which she'd apparently been accommodating by manufacturing situations during our scheduled family time, the soccer practice pickups, the casual dinners when Kai visited her apartment, even phone conversations between them had been broadcast to an audience that was paying specifically to observe our family's private interactions. The subscriber demographics Riley uncovered made my stomach turn. The majority of paying viewers were middle-aged men who joined specifically for what they termed family dynamic content. Their comments and messages to Serafina revealed an uncomfortably voyeuristic interest in observing teenage family relationships and household conversations. Some had been subscribers since she'd started the account, following our family's activities with the dedication of regular television viewers following a favorite show. When Riley showed me the earnings breakdown, I realized that Serafina had been generating more monthly income from exploiting our family's privacy than I'd been providing in child support payments. Her OnlyFans revenue had steadily increased as she'd developed what her profile described as exclusive access to real family life, with subscribers paying premium rates for live streams featuring family gatherings and holiday celebration. The legal implications were immediately clear. Marcus explained that Serafina had been violating multiple privacy laws by broadcasting Kai without consent, potentially exposing him to online predators, and commercializing family moments that occurred in my home without my permission. We had grounds for emergency custody modification, civil liability claims, and possibly criminal charges depending on how the district attorney's office interpreted the evidence. But the personal betrayal cut deeper than any legal violation. For 8 months, while I'd been trying to maintain a cordial co-parenting relationship for Kai's benefit, Serafina had been systematically monetizing our family's most private moments, turning our son's childhood into content for strangers' entertainment. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening when Serafina was scheduled to pick up Kai from soccer practice. I'd spent the previous day reviewing Riley's evidence with Marcus, planning exactly how to approach the situation without escalating it into something that might harm Kai's relationship with his mother. Marcus had advised documenting everything but avoiding any actions that could be interpreted as harassment or intimidation. I decided to wait until after she'd dropped Kai off at my house, then request a private conversation about what I'd discovered. When Serafina arrived at my front door that evening, she seemed unusually cheerful, almost energetic in a way that I now recognized as the performance persona she'd developed for her online audience. She was carrying her phone in her hand, positioned at an angle that suggested she might be preparing to stream their conversation or document their interaction for later content. Kai had gone upstairs to shower and start his homework, giving us the privacy I needed to address the situation directly. "We need to talk," I said, gesturing for her to come inside rather than conducting the conversation on my front porch where neighbors might overhear. "It's about your OnlyFans account and the fact that you've been live streaming our family for the past 8 months. Her expression changed immediately, the cheerful facade disappearing as she realized I'd discovered what she'd been doing. For several seconds, she didn't respond, and I could see her mind working through possible explanations or denials. "How did you find out?" she asked finally, her voice quieter than usual. There was no attempt to deny the accusation or claim I was mistaken, which confirmed that Riley's investigation had been accurate. "That's not the important question," I replied. "The important question is why you thought it was acceptable to monetize our son's private life without his consent or mine." I showed her printouts of the evidence Riley had compiled, including screenshots of her promotional materials and earnings records that clearly demonstrated the scope of her exploitation. Serafina sat down on my living room couch, still holding her phone, but no longer in the streaming position she'd maintained when she arrived. "You don't understand the financial pressure I'm under," she said, her voice taking on a defensive tone that suggested she'd been preparing this justification for months. "My mother's medical bills have been overwhelming since her cancer diagnosis. The insurance doesn't cover everything, and I've been struggling to keep up with the treatment costs while maintaining my regular job." This was the first I'd heard about her mother's health problems. During our divorce proceedings and subsequent co-parenting arrangements, Serafina had never mentioned any family medical issues or financial hardships beyond the normal adjustments of single parenthood. "Why didn't you tell me about your mother's situation?" I asked. "I would have helped with medical expenses if you'd explained what was happening." Her response revealed a resentment I hadn't fully understood during our marriage or divorce. "Because I didn't want to ask you for more money," she said, her voice rising slightly. "You already act like the generous ex-husband who bought me the car and helps with Kai's expenses. I didn't want to become even more dependent on your financial support." She gestured around my living room, which admittedly was nicer than her apartment, though I'd worked years to afford the mortgage payments. "You have this house, your successful marketing career, your comfortable life. This was my way of building my own financial independence." What she described as financial independence had involved systematically violating our family's privacy and potentially exposing our son to online predators. "Serafina, you've been broadcasting our private family moments to nearly 3,000 paying subscribers," I said, showing her the subscriber count from Riley's research. "Some of these people have been following our family's activities for months, commenting on Kai's development and requesting specific content featuring him. Do you understand how dangerous that is?" Her justification became more elaborate as she realized the full extent of what I'd discovered. She claimed that she'd been careful never to show Kai's face directly in her promotional materials, that she'd avoided using his name in her content descriptions, and that the majority of her subscribers were simply lonely people looking for authentic family content, rather than anything inappropriate. "It's not what you're making it sound like," she insisted. "Most of the comments are from women who miss having family connections, or older people who enjoy watching positive family interactions." But as our conversation continued, it became clear that Serafina had rationalized her actions to the point where she genuinely believed she was providing a valuable service rather than exploiting our family's privacy. She'd developed relationships with regular subscribers who she described as like extended family, people who'd been following our lives for months and whom she felt genuine affection toward. The financial success had reinforced her belief that what she was doing was acceptable, even beneficial. The conversation was interrupted when Kai appeared at the top of the stairs, having apparently overheard more of our discussion than I'd realized. "Mom, what's OnlyFans?" he asked, his voice carrying the confusion of someone who'd caught fragments of a conversation he didn't fully understand. Serafina's face went pale as she realized our son had been listening to us discuss her exploitation of his privacy. "It's a website where people post videos," she said carefully, clearly trying to avoid explaining the full nature of the platform or her activities. But Kai had been using the internet long enough to understand that our conversation involved something more serious than casual video sharing. "Have you been filming me?" he asked directly, looking between his mother and me with an expression that suggested he was beginning to piece together the implications of what he'd overheard. The moment when our son learned that his mother had been monetizing their private relationship for 8 months was devastating to witness. His confusion transformed into betrayal as Serafina attempted to explain her actions in terms he might understand, describing her financial pressures and her need to generate income through sharing family moments with people who appreciated them. Kai's response was immediate and heartbreaking. "So when we baked cookies for Valentine's Day, and when you picked me up from practice, and when we talked about college plans, there were strangers watching us." The realization that hundreds of people had been observing his private conversations with his mother, paying money to access his personal family moments, was clearly overwhelming for him to process. The legal proceedings that followed moved faster than I'd anticipated. Marcus filed an emergency motion for temporary custody modification the next morning, citing the evidence Riley had compiled about Serafina's systematic exploitation of Kai's privacy. The family court judge, Patricia Hendricks, reviewed our documentation during a preliminary hearing held just 3 days after our confrontation. Her expression remained neutral as Marcus presented screenshots of the OnlyFans content, subscriber comments, and financial records showing 8 months of monetized family broadcasts. Judge Hendricks granted the emergency motion, temporarily suspending Serafina's unsupervised visitation rights pending a full investigation by the Department of Children and Family Services. The order also included an immediate cease and desist requirement, prohibiting Serafina from posting any content featuring Kai or referencing their family relationship on any online platform. She was required to remove all existing content that included him from her OnlyFans account within 48 hours and provide documentation that the removal had been completed. Serafina's response to the court order was more aggressive than I'd expected. She hired Jennifer Walsh, a lawyer who specialized in defending content creators against what she termed digital privacy overreach. Walsh argued that Serafina's OnlyFans content constituted artistic expression protected by the First Amendment, and that the family court was overstepping its authority by regulating her online. She filed a counter motion claiming that I was using the legal system to harass my ex-wife out of jealousy over her financial success. The legal battle intensified when Walsh discovered that OnlyFans had already begun removing Serafina's content following reports from other users who'd learned about this. Apparently, word had spread through various ons about content creators who'd been secretly filming family, and platform had begun mass reporting her account for violating terms of service regarding consent and minor exploitation. Within a week of our court fight, Serafina's entire account had been suspended, eliminating her monthly income and invalidating Walsh's arguments about artistic expression. The suspension triggered a cascade of consequences that extended beyond our family court case. Several of Serafina's subscribers had apparently saved her content before the platform removal, and some had begun sharing screenshots and videos on other websites with commentary about the ethics of her broadcasts. Online forums dedicated to discussing OnlyFans creators picked up the story, debating whether paying to watch secretly recorded family content constituted a form of voyeurism or exploitation. The negative attention affected Kai more than I'd anticipated. His classmates began finding references to the situation online, leading to uncomfortable questions and comments at school that he wasn't prepared to handle. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, called me to discuss providing additional support for Kai as he processed both the betrayal by his mother and the public nature of the legal proceedings. She recommended family therapy and suggested that Kai might benefit from talking to other teenagers who'd experienced similar violations of privacy. Kai's relationship with his mother became increasingly strained as the full scope of her activities became clear. During their first supervised visitation, arranged through the Family Services Department, he asked her directly about specific broadcasts that Riley's investigation had uncovered. He wanted to know whether their conversation about his college anxiety had been streamed live, whether subscribers had been watching when he'd cried about not making varsity soccer his sophomore year, and whether the people commenting on her content had been discussing his personal struggles. Serafina's attempts to minimize the impact of her actions only deepened Kai's sense of betrayal. She continued to insist that most of her subscribers were good people who genuinely cared about their family, and that the income she'd generated had been necessary for covering her mother's medical expenses. But when Kai asked to speak with his grandmother directly, we discovered another layer of deception that complicated the situation further. Kai's grandmother, Margaret, was indeed undergoing cancer treatment, but her medical costs were largely covered by Medicare and supplemental insurance that Serafina had failed to mention. Margaret had been unaware of her daughter's OnlyFans activities and was horrified to learn that her medical situation had been used to justify exploiting her grandson's privacy. She agreed to provide financial documentation to the court, showing that Serafina's claims about overwhelming medical bills had been exaggerated. The discovery that Serafina had been misleading us about her mother's financial needs prompted Riley to conduct a deeper investigation into how the OnlyFans income had actually been used. Bank records subpoenaed through the court case revealed that while some money had gone toward Margaret's medical costs, the majority had been spent on lifestyle expenses and investments that had nothing to do with her claimed financial emergency. Monthly spending records showed regular purchases of designer clothing, expensive restaurant meals, and spa treatments that suggested Serafina had been using the steady OnlyFans income to maintain a lifestyle significantly above what her regular job would support. There were also transfers to cryptocurrency investment accounts and several large cash withdrawals that couldn't be accounted for through normal living expenses or medical bills. Most damaging was the discovery that Serafina had been planning to expand her content creation beyond family broadcasts. Messages between her and other OnlyFans creators discussed strategies for growing the family brand and monetizing teenage content in ways that made clear she viewed Kai's presence in her content as a business asset rather than a violation of his privacy. The psychological evaluation ordered by Judge Hendricks raised additional concerns about Serafina's understanding of appropriate boundaries between parenting and financial exploitation. Dr. Amanda Foster, the court-appointed psychologist, noted that Serafina demonstrated significant rationalization of exploitative behavior and inability to prioritize her child's welfare over personal financial gain. As the legal proceedings dragged into their second month, the impact on our entire family became increasingly apparent. My parents, who'd been featured in several of Serafina's broadcasts without their knowledge, struggled with the knowledge that their private conversations about Kai's future had been entertainment for paying strangers. My brother Zenith, who'd discovered the initial live stream, felt guilty about the family upheaval that had followed his decision to tell me what he'd found. The custody modification hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after the initial emergency motion, giving both sides time to prepare their cases and complete the required investigations. But as that date approached, I realized that regardless of the legal outcome, the fundamental trust that had held our co-parenting relationship together had been permanently shattered. The deeper investigation into Serafina's financial activities revealed deceptions that went far beyond what any of us had imagined. Riley's forensic analysis of the bank records subpoenaed through our court case uncovered a pattern of transfers that had nothing to do with medical expenses or financial survival. Instead, the majority of Serafina's OnlyFans earnings had been systematically moved into cryptocurrency investments managed by someone named Trevor Caldwell, a 29-year-old day trader she'd apparently been in a relationship with for the past 4 months. The connection between Serafina and Trevor had been carefully hidden from our family and from the court proceedings. Riley found encrypted messaging apps on Serafina's phone records that showed daily communication with Trevor dating back to February, around the time her OnlyFans earnings had significantly increased. Their conversations revealed that Trevor had been coaching Serafina on content creation strategies, suggesting specific types of family interactions that would generate higher subscriber engagement and encouraging her to broadcast more frequent family events. Trevor's background check revealed a concerning pattern of financial exploitation involving multiple women he'd met through various dating applications. He'd convinced at least 3 other women to invest their savings in cryptocurrency schemes that had resulted in substantial losses, leaving them financially devastated while he moved on to new targets. His social media profiles showed a lifestyle funded by other people's money, expensive cars and vacations that didn't correspond with any legitimate employment history. The relationship between Serafina and Trevor explained many of the decisions that had seemed irrational during our initial investigation. Her sudden increase in OnlyFans content featuring family gatherings coincided with when she'd started dating him. The cryptocurrency transfers that Riley had discovered were directed toward trading accounts controlled by Trevor, meaning that the money Serafina had earned by exploiting our family's privacy was being gambled away by someone who specialized in financially manipulating vulnerable women. When confronted with this evidence during a deposition, Serafina initially denied the romantic relationship, claiming that Trevor was simply a financial advisor who'd been helping her manage her OnlyFans income. But phone records and social media activity clearly documented their relationship, including photos of them together at expensive restaurants and vacation destinations that had been funded by her exploitation of our family's private moments. The realization that our son's privacy had been violated not just for Serafina's financial benefit, but to fund her boyfriend's failed investment schemes added another layer of betrayal to an already devastating situation. Marcus used this evidence to strengthen our custody case, arguing that Serafina had demonstrated such poor judgment in both her parenting decisions and personal relationships that continued unsupervised access to Kai would be harmful to his well-being. But the investigation also revealed that Kai himself had been more directly exploited than we'd initially understood. Riley discovered promotional materials on Trevor's social media accounts that used cropped images of Kai to advertise Serafina's OnlyFans content to potential subscribers. Trevor had been actively marketing our family's private moments across multiple platforms, describing Serafina's content as authentic mother-son interactions and real family dynamics to attract subscribers interested in that specific type of voyeuristic content. The marketing materials included detailed descriptions of Kai's personality, his academic achievements, and his relationship with his mother, all written in language designed to appeal to adults who were paying specifically to observe teenage family interactions. Trevor had created what amounted to a character profile of our son, treating him like a fictional personality whose private life could be packaged and sold for entertainment. Most disturbing was the discovery that Trevor had been pressuring Serafina to include more content featuring Kai, suggesting specific conversations and activities that would generate higher subscriber engagement. Messages between them discussed strategies for maximizing the son content and building the family brand in ways that made clear Trevor viewed our son as a business asset rather than a child whose privacy deserved protection. The psychological impact on Kai intensified as these revelations came to light during the custody proceedings. Learning that his mother's boyfriend had been actively marketing his private life to strangers was devastating for him to process. During a session with Dr. Foster, the family therapist we'd been seeing, Kai expressed feeling like a product that was being sold, rather than a son whose mother should have been protecting his privacy. The extended family consequences of these discoveries created additional stress for everyone involved. My parents, who'd been featured prominently in several of Trevor's promotional campaigns, struggled with the knowledge that their conversations with their grandson had been used as marketing material for adult entertainment. My brother Zenith felt responsible for exposing the family to ongoing legal battles and media attention that none of us had been prepared to handle. Serafina's mother, Margaret, became an unexpected ally in our custody case when she learned the full extent of how her medical situation had been misrepresented. Margaret provided testimony that Serafina had never asked for financial help with medical bills, and that her daughter had actually been avoiding family gatherings and phone calls during the months when she'd been most active on OnlyFans. Margaret realized that Serafina had been using her cancer diagnosis as emotional manipulation to justify exploiting Kai's privacy. The court-appointed guardian ad litem, Michael Torres, interviewed Kai extensively about his preferences regarding custody and visitation arrangements. Kai expressed feeling betrayed, not just by his mother's exploitation of their relationship, but by her willingness to allow her boyfriend to profit from his private life. He told Torres that he didn't feel safe having private conversations with his mother because he couldn't trust that they wouldn't be recorded or shared with strangers. As we approached the final custody hearing, the evidence painted a picture of systematic exploitation that had involved multiple adults conspiring to monetize a teenager's private family relationships. What had initially appeared to be a mother's misguided attempt to generate income during financial difficulties had revealed itself as part of a calculated scheme to profit from violating a child's privacy and dignity. The realization that Trevor was still actively pursuing other women through dating apps, using the same strategies he'd employed with Serafina, prompted Marcus to contact authorities in other jurisdictions where similar exploitation might be occurring. Our family's nightmare had potentially prevented other families from experiencing similar violations of privacy and trust. The custody hearing began on a Thursday morning in October, 8 weeks after I'd first discovered Serafina's live streaming activities. Judge Hendricks had scheduled 3 full days for testimony and evidence presentation, acknowledging that the case involved complex issues around digital privacy, child exploitation, and parental fitness that would require careful consideration. Marcus had prepared meticulously, organizing hundreds of pages of evidence documenting the systematic nature of Serafina's exploitation and the financial motives that had driven her decisions. Jennifer Walsh, Serafina's attorney, opened with an argument that the court was overreacting to what she characterized as modern parenting in the digital age. She claimed that thousands of parents shared family content online without facing criminal charges or losing custody of their children, and that the only difference in Serafina's case was the platform she'd chosen to use. Walsh argued that OnlyFans was simply another social media website, and that the monetary aspect of Serafina's content creation was irrelevant to her fitness as a parent. The first day of testimony focused on the evidence Riley had compiled about the scope and duration of Serafina's activities. Marcus presented financial records showing $127,000 in total earnings from content that featured our family, subscriber comments requesting specific types of family interactions, and promotional materials that had used Kai's image and personal information to attract paying viewers. Judge Hendricks examined each piece of evidence carefully, asking detailed questions about the timeline of events and the methods used to gather the information. Dr. Amanda Foster's psychological evaluation provided damaging testimony about Serafina's mental state and decision-making capacity. Dr. Foster explained that Serafina demonstrated persistent minimization of harm when discussing her exploitation of Kai's privacy and inability to prioritize her child's well-being over financial consideration. She noted that Serafina had expressed more concern about losing her OnlyFans income than about the impact her actions had on Kai's emotional development and sense of security. The second day brought testimony from Margaret, Serafina's mother, who contradicted many of the justifications Serafina had offered for her behavior. Margaret explained that she'd never asked Serafina for money to cover medical expenses, and that her daughter had actually been less involved in her cancer treatment than she'd been before starting her OnlyFans activities. Margaret's testimony effectively destroyed Serafina's claims about financial desperation driving her exploitation of our family's privacy. Kai's testimony, conducted in private with only Judge Hendricks, the court reporter, and the guardian ad litem present, proved to be the most compelling evidence presented during the hearing. Although I wasn't allowed in the room during his testimony, Michael Torres later described Kai's emotional state as he explained how discovering his mother's activities had affected his ability to trust her with private conversations or personal information. Kai had specifically requested that his visitation with his mother remain supervised until he felt confident that their interactions wouldn't be recorded or shared with strangers. The revelation of Trevor Caldwell's involvement added criminal dimensions to what had initially been treated as a family court matter. Detective Ray Morrison from the Financial Crimes Division testified about their investigation into Trevor's pattern of exploiting women through cryptocurrency scams and content creation schemes. Morrison explained that Trevor had been under investigation for similar activities involving other families, and that our case had provided crucial evidence for potential criminal charges against him. Walsh's defense strategy crumbled when she attempted to present character witnesses who could speak to Serafina's parenting abilities. Several potential witnesses withdrew their support after learning the full extent of the exploitation, including the use of Kai's image in promotional materials and Trevor's involvement in marketing our family's private moments. The few witnesses who did testify offered only vague statements about Serafina being a caring mother, without addressing the specific behaviors that had brought us to court. The most damaging moment for Serafina's case came when Walsh called her to testify in her own defense. Under cross-examination, Marcus methodically walked through the evidence showing how Serafina's activities had escalated over time, from occasional family content to systematic exploitation designed to maximize revenue. When asked directly whether she understood why broadcasting private family conversations to paying strangers might be harm to her son, Serafina's responses revealed that she still didn't fully comprehend the violation she'd committed. Marcus presented evidence that Serafina had continued communicating with some of her former OnlyFans subscribers even after the platform had removed her account, exchanging personal messages about our family situation and providing updates about the custody proceedings. These communications violated the court's earlier order prohibiting her from sharing information about Kai with her former audience, demonstrating ongoing disregard for judicial authority and her son's privacy rights. The financial analysis Riley had conducted showed that Serafina had spent less than 15% of her OnlyFans earnings on legitimate expenses like medical bills or basic living costs. The majority had been transferred to Trevor's investment accounts or spent on lifestyle purchases that had no relationship to the financial emergency she'd claimed was driving her exploitation of our family. This evidence directly contradicted her testimony about needing the income for survival purposes. On the third day of the hearing, several of Serafina's former subscribers had contacted the court offering to provide testimony about the nature of the content they'd paid to access. Judge Hendricks allowed limited testimony from 2 subscribers who explained that they'd specifically sought out Serafina's content because it featured authentic family interactions with a teenage son and real mother-son conversations. Their testimony confirmed that Kai's presence in the content had been a primary selling point for subscribers who were paying specifically to observe family dynamics involving a teenager. The guardian ad litem's final report recommended that I be granted primary physical custody, with Serafina's visitation remaining supervised for a minimum of 6 months. Michael Torres cited Kai's expressed preferences, the evidence of systematic exploitation, and Serafina's continued minimization of harm as factors supporting this recommendation. He noted that rebuilding trust between Kai and his mother would require significant therapeutic intervention and demonstrated changes in her understanding of appropriate boundaries. When Judge Hendricks announced her decision on Friday afternoon, the courtroom was packed with family members, legal representatives, and several reporters who'd been following the case as an example of emerging digital privacy issues. Her ruling granted me primary physical custody, modified Serafina's visitation to supervised contact only, and required her to complete parenting education classes focused on digital privacy and child protection before any consideration of unsupervised visitation could be made. Judge Hendricks specifically noted that Serafina's actions constituted systematic exploitation of a minor child for financial gain and fundamental violation of parental duty to protect rather than profit from a child's private life. She ordered Serafina to have no contact with Trevor Caldwell and to provide monthly financial statements to ensure that any future income wasn't being used in ways that might again compromise Kai's welfare or privacy. The victory felt hollow despite the favorable outcome. While the legal system had protected Kai's future privacy and recognized the severity of what had happened to our family, the fundamental trust that had been violated couldn't be restored through court orders or custody modifications. The months following the custody hearing brought a gradual, sometimes painful process of rebuilding our family's foundation on new terms. Kai moved in with me permanently, converting my home office into a proper bedroom and adjusting to the daily routines of living primarily in one household rather than splitting time between two parents. The initial weeks were difficult as he processed the court proceedings and their implications for his relationship with his mother, but Dr. Foster's continued therapy sessions helped him navigate the complex emotions surrounding betrayal and forgiveness. Kai's first supervised visit with Serafina took place 6 weeks after the court decision, in a neutral office supervised by a family services counselor. I waited in the lobby during their 2-hour session, reading the same magazine pages repeatedly while wondering how their conversation was progressing. When Kai emerged, his expression was subdued but not devastated, which I interpreted as a positive sign considering the circumstances. He told me later that his mother had apologized for her actions but still seemed to minimize their impact, focusing more on her financial pressures than on how her choices had affected his sense of security and privacy. The supervised visitations continued monthly throughout the winter, with gradual improvements in their communication, as Serafina completed the court-mandated parenting classes and individual therapy sessions. Dr. Sarah Kim, the therapist assigned to work with Serafina, provided quarterly reports to the court documenting her progress in understanding the harmful nature of her exploitation and developing appropriate boundaries between her financial needs and her parenting responsibilities. The reports showed slow but measurable improvement in her ability to prioritize Kai's well-being over her own immediate desires. By spring, other families began contacting me after learning about our case through media coverage and legal proceedings that had become public record. Detective Morrison's investigation into Trevor Caldwell had uncovered similar exploitation schemes involving at least 4 other divorced mothers who'd been convinced to monetize their family relationships through various online platforms. These families were dealing with their own custody battles and privacy violations, seeking advice about legal strategies and emotional support for children who'd experienced similar betrayals. The support network that developed from these connections led to the formation of what we initially called the Digital Family Privacy Support Group, meeting monthly in the conference room of Marcus's law office. The group included parents, teenagers, and sometimes grandparents who'd been affected by online exploitation within their families. Sharing experiences with others who understood the unique nature of digital privacy violations helped Kai process his emotions and realize that he wasn't alone in experiencing this type of betrayal. Kai's academic performance, which had suffered during the legal proceedings, gradually improved as he regained his sense of security and privacy. His guidance counselor noted that he seemed more focused in class and had begun participating in extracurricular activities again, including rejoining the soccer team for his senior year. College applications, which had been postponed during the chaos of the custody battle, became a positive focus as he researched programs and prepared for standardized tests with renewed enthusiasm about his future. The financial investigation into Trevor Caldwell resulted in criminal charges for fraud and exploitation in multiple jurisdictions. His conviction on federal charges related to cryptocurrency scams brought some satisfaction, knowing that his pattern of manipulating vulnerable women had been interrupted. Serafina had been required to testify in his trial, an experience that seemed to clarify for her how completely she'd been manipulated and used in his schemes to exploit other people's trust and resources. Serafina's supervised visitations gradually extended to unsupervised day visits by Kai's 18th birthday, though overnight stays remained prohibited until the Family Services Department completed additional evaluations. Her compliance with the court's requirements had been consistent, and her therapy sessions showed genuine progress in understanding how her choices had damaged her relationship with her son. The monthly financial reporting required by the court confirmed that she was maintaining stable employment and avoiding the high-risk financial decisions that had previously compromised her judgment. The most significant milestone came during Kai's graduation from high school, an event we all approached with anxiety, given the traumatic associations with his previous graduation party. This time, the celebration was small and completely private, held in my backyard with only immediate family members and a few close friends. Serafina attended, bringing a thoughtful gift and participating appropriately in the family gathering without any apparent urge to document or broadcast the occasion. For the first time in over a year, we functioned as a family unit focused entirely on celebrating Kai's achievement. The college transition provided an opportunity for Kai and Serafina to rebuild their relationship on adult terms rather than the parent-child dynamic that had been so severely damaged by her exploitation. Their conversations became more honest as Kai felt secure enough to express his feelings about what had happened without fear that his words might be recorded or shared with strangers. Serafina's responses showed growth in her ability to accept responsibility for her actions without deflecting blame onto external circumstances or other people. The digital family privacy support group evolved into a more formal organization with legal resources and educational programs for families dealing with online exploitation issues. Marcus provided pro bono legal guidance, while Dr. Foster developed counseling protocols specifically designed for children and teenagers whose privacy had been violated by family members. The organization's work attracted attention from lawmakers interested in strengthening legal protections for minors in digital spaces. By Kai's sophomore year of college, our family had established new traditions and routines that reflected the lessons we'd learned about trust, privacy, and forgiveness. Holiday gatherings included both parents, but with clear boundaries about device usage and respect for private conversations. Serafina's relationship with Kai had matured into something resembling friendship, built on mutual respect rather than the exploitative dynamic that had characterized their interactions during her OnlyFans period. The experience taught me that betrayal, even from those closest to us, doesn't have to define our future relationships or our capacity for trust. Kai emerged from the ordeal with a sophisticated understanding of digital privacy, healthy skepticism about social media exploitation, and surprisingly mature insights about forgiveness and personal boundaries. While the violation of our family's privacy had been devastating, the process of recovery had strengthened our relationships in ways that might not have developed under normal circumstances. The greatest victory wasn't the favorable custody decision or even Trevor's criminal conviction, but watching Kai develop into a young adult who understood his own worth and refused to accept exploitation from anyone, including family members who claimed to love him. He'd learned to trust wisely while maintaining his capacity for genuine connection, a balance that would serve him well throughout his life. Looking back now, I realized that the most important lesson wasn't about protecting privacy or recognizing manipulation, but about the possibility of rebuilding trust after it's been shattered, as long as everyone involved commits to the difficult work of honest communication and genuine change.